All right, GM, everyone. Welcome to Apyx Weekly Office Hours. This is number 6 in the series. My name is Pete Humiston, founding contributor here at Apyx. We've got none other than Parker, founding contributor of Apyx, who's joined us today. We're going to be going through, as usual, some of the things that we accomplished so far since our last spaces, as well as just presenting an opportunity for folks to come up and ask questions. Of course, this will be recorded and we'll have a replay available in our Discord for people to listen back to, as well as on YouTube. So, Parker, quick mic check. How's it going, man?
Good. How y'all doing?
Good, good. It's been a lot has happened over the past week since we had our last office hours. I mean, man, I didn't even know what day of the week it was for a second, but yeah, I'm just trying to think back to last week, and it seems like a lot's changed, both in terms of what we have announced publicly, but also just behind the scenes, like what we've been up to. But I know, of course, on the latter, we can't really get into it too much. I guess taking a step back, and as a reminder, anyone in the audience, if you have questions, feel free to throw up your hand or post under the pinned tweet. Looking back, I think on this week, we had a number of pretty notable milestones, namely apxUSD supply surpassed $100 million, which also coincided with us adding an extra 50K stretch shares to the protocol balance sheet. So we're coming up on 500,000, which is really exciting at this pace. I'm sure we'll hit it next week. Um, anything on that front, Parker? Anything you want to hit on?
No, not really. I think, things are moving along. Things are moving along fantastically. Um,
Faster maybe than we expected. Or although if I do recall, I think last week we were saying we were, all of us internally were expecting APX USD to surpass 100 million into the weekend.
yep, that's true. So yeah, I think, growing well. And we've been kind of building a bit of a cash balance right now. There's an interesting dynamic with Stretch where when it's trading at 100, it's never going to trade above 100. Because they're going to run the ATM. But when it's trading at 100, you basically don't get paid to hold it until the dividend happens. So whether you buy, day 1 or day 30, you get the same yield. And they never let it, again, trade really above 100 because they run the ATM. And so we can basically wait till the end, deploy all the cash. And in the meantime, just hold the cash in treasuries and generate some, passive yield that way. So a little bit of a yield thing going on, but we'll be announcing some pretty bigly stretch buys here over the next few days.
Yeah, just on that point, just another example too of where the protocol, we're in a pretty unique situation where we can generate some additional yield, which will in one way or another flow back to participants of the protocol, be it on the governance token side or just in the APY side, or maybe even the APX side, who knows. But awesome. Yeah, I think other than that too, we had some pretty good, like, notable partnership announcements as well. Chainlink CCIP to help with our cross-chain transfers, which was also announced in part with us launching in on base last week as well. Um, I think we also came out, on the base front too. We announced that Apex is officially live on Aerodrome, which is the go-to DEX and liquidity hub on base. So opportunity for folks to swap into APX USD on base, as well as access some liquidity across a couple of different pools, the USDC and the Apex or APX USD pool, as well as the APY and APX pool. So that was another notable development this week. With that also came APX USD markets now live on Pendle on base as well. So the push into base continues, which we're really excited about internally. And then I think, like, kind of the last thing, probably worth hitting on, um, apyUSD. It's also live now on Volts .fyi. So you can lock APX into APY directly through Volts UI. Lastly, I just said lastly, but I think maybe the other thing too, we published what I think is a pretty decent, granted I'm the author behind it, pretty decent piece this morning talking about how effectively we think Stretch could really be, in the next few years, this 100 and up to $120 billion financial primitive that has the power, I think, to send Bitcoin to as high as 650K. We've got that pinned on our profile. It's the article entitled STRC, $120 billion financial primitive that could send Bitcoin to 650K. Would encourage folks who are curious about the adoption of Stretch to date, as well as where we see that headed going forward and the implications for Bitcoin. Definitely a piece to check out. Cool. So that was
Yeah, very, very well written piece there, Pete.
thanks. Yeah. There is I did a piece a while ago back when I was at Kraken where it was talking about something really similar. That's, the idea is that Bitcoin and other disruptive technologies follow this S curve adoption curve. And, it was nice just being able to apply that to Stretch very much in the same way that Stretch is, very, very much just an extension of Bitcoin too. So it's all like kind of coming full circle for me, which is cool. But yeah, again, would encourage folks to check that out if it sounds like there's something you're interested in. Um, in terms of questions, folks, again in the audience, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring you on up to ask. You can also comment under the pinned post. I'm actually going to pin the spaces right now. Under the pinned post, you can drop a question or comment as well. But Parker,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think,
anything you want to hit on?
yeah, while we're waiting for folks to come in on the questions, one thing I want to highlight on the Stretch side is that, I know it's a preferred stock vehicle and those have been around for a long time, but I think this particular structure, variable rate, is fairly unique. But more importantly, I think this is a very new primitive. And, when there's a new startup that's building a new platform or something, people like recognize it as new, as, like software engineering. Whoa, this is really cool. But when there's a piece of financial engineering out there, people are like, that's just like rearranging deck chairs. Like, it's not interesting. But I think if you look at the history of, you know, the global economy, like human coordination, um, financial innovation has been just as important as any other type of innovation. In fact, I'd say, maybe more important than most other types of innovation. So you can think of things like the common stock or equity, right? That was a piece of financial innovation that allowed unprecedented coordination, across humans around the world, across different languages. Debt instruments, obviously this concept of debt was another huge piece of financial innovation, derivatives, options, all these things. And so I think it's real easy to dismiss STRC as, like it's just, it's just a preferred stock, whatever. They're overhyping it. But I actually think it's another piece of financial innovation because of the instrument that's backing it, Bitcoin, and a digital asset. And so I think, in many years' time, people will look back on this and be like, oh yeah, like, variable rate, non-convertible preferreds or variable rate preferreds. Like, of course, this was this seminal piece of innovation and, whatever. But I think a lot of people right now don't see it as such. And so I think they're kind of missing the massive, massive opportunity here. And, another really exciting piece of it is the kind of confluence of what's happening in the world right now, particularly in credit markets. So, you look at obviously people would say like this, instrument is a pretty alternative form of credit, non-standard, but there's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars in private credit, which is all non-standard, unique. And so I think just because it's unique and non-standard does not mean the the upside is capped. And Stretch today at, less than 10 billion in issuance is just a tiny, tiny, tiny drop in the bucket relative to some of these other, financial innovations out there. And so, I think it's going to get a lot bigger. I think a lot more companies are going to issue this type of instrument. I think it's going to become the primary funding mechanism for digital asset treasuries. And I think there's going to be a rotation of capital out of private credit, maybe out of other types of credit as well, into this instrument. And whether it, peaks out at 100 billion, 200 billion, or a trillion, you could debate, and probably it will hit all of those at some point in time. Not Stretch itself, but like the market for variable rate preferreds issued by DATs. But regardless, whether 100 billion is the next train stop or a couple 100 billion or a trillion, where we are today is a tiny, tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. And so I think there's massive upside. And I think the setup is perfect, issuing in a bear market, really starting to accelerate in a bear market. Whenever you see an innovation that works in a bear market, it's not just based on hype. And so you look at some of the last innovations in crypto, they all started in bear markets. And so I'm, super bullish on this construct for all sorts of reasons. So anyways, I'll shut up now. Hopefully there's lots of questions.
Yeah, no, that was a excellent point made. It is as we like to call it, the apex digital credit. And the ceiling is unknown, but suffice to say we're not anywhere close near it, in our opinion, but cool. Anyone in the audience have a question, feel free to come on up, raise your hand, we'll bring you up to speak. I'm seeing no questions at the moment. Anyone else? Going, gone. Okay. Well, this is a little bit of a shorter weekly spaces. That's okay. We like to keep these as short or as long as they need to be. But of course, this is just part of a broader effort to continue to stay transparent, engage with the community, source feedback, all that good stuff. So with that said, thanks everyone for coming in. And for those of you listening to the recorded version, thanks for opening it up. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, at any point, send us a DM, come in the Discord, let us know. Parker, any parting words?
That's it. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Parker. Take care, guys.